Here we are this morning, the Ryan Crossley Show. So glad you're here with us today. We've got a very special guest coming in just a short while. Ryan Chamberlain, who ran for Congress in a very competitive race and is now a developer of something that I believe could be incredible. But we are just thankful for one more day to be able to talk about what's going on in this world. Now, let me tell you what my concern is, and I'm not going to take a lot of time today because I'm going to be talking with Ryan, and we're going to find out a lot of things about what he's doing and what's coming up and how it can be great for us as patriots. But let me tell you one of the things that I am very concerned about, and that is I am very concerned about all of this, the vaccine pushers coming after our kids. That's really, really bugging me. I just read something on the way to the show this morning. We have basically 78 million children in the United States of America. 78 million children. That's a lot of kids. 78 million children. And they calculate, and this is according to the numbers of, it's so hard to know what numbers are true or not anymore. Right now, we know that numbers are being inflated. But let's take the number that they have said. Let's take the number that they're giving, and they're saying less than 700. So not 700, they're taking less than 700. Now, when I did this a few months back, I think the amount of children that had died through COVID complications, and I want to qualify that, COVID complications. That's very important, because if we just say COVID, then it seems to be the sole problem of whatever the death was. But it's not. It's a COVID complication, which means a lot of these children, unfortunately, were already dealing with sicknesses in their bodies. And what happened was COVID complicated it, because it is definitely affects breathing. We know that it affects the heart. And so they died of COVID complications. But to give you an idea, that number is not even up to 700. Now, as I've said before, one is too many. But we also live in a world that we are not going to be exempt from sadness, and we're not going to be exempt from tragedy, and we're not going to be exempt from sickness and disease. It is part of life. We are never going to be 100% protected from everything bad that can happen to us. That is just a false ideology. It's not going to happen, and it is because our world is contaminated and man is contaminated. So let's take their number, and so let's go less than 700, and let's go 680, just for all sense and purposes of our project today. So here's what I've come up with. Here's the percentage of children out of 78 million children. Okay, the statistics in an article in the USA Today said that 700 less than 700 children have died from COVID complications in the last, and let's actually qualify this, because this is not just in a year or in a flu season. All right, let's qualify this. This is in the last year, and well, we're almost going on 2 years now. We're really only 2 months away, 3 months away from a full 2 year process of this. So it's not a year, it's way over a year. We're talking a year and at least about 8 or 9 months now. So in a year and 9 months, less than 700 children have died from COVID complications. So I just went ahead and put the number at 680. That's less than 700. Just for, it's really insignificant. In fact, you know what? I'll just go ahead and do 700, because that way we're taking the high number, and we can get, it's practically the same thing. So here's what we have: 78 million children in the United States of America, and it is an all-on push for you to get your kids vaccinated. In fact, you're going to be considered a horrible parent if you don't vaccinate your children, if that's what you're going to be considered by the left. God help us that they don't send out Department of Children and Family, DCF, because you've refused to vaccinate your kids because you have some principles, convictions against it. Hope it doesn't come to that. But here's the percentage. You ready? Here's the percentage of children that have died in comparison to all the children that are in the United States of America. The percentage chance of a child dying from COVID is 0.0000897. So we are on an all-out push to vaccinate kids, okay, when it's 0.0000897% chance that they would die of COVID. I think it's insane to think that we are going to do this, or allow them to do this, because it's not a risk, okay? It's not a risk, because children are not a high risk. And the problem with it is that we're going to force this on parents, and we're going to force this on kids when there's absolutely zero reason to do it. It should be a parent's choice, okay? It should be a parent's choice. There is some, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think New York and California are mandating all kids that are going to go to public schools have to be vaccinated. Why? You have much more serious problems going on. Much more serious problems. Why don't you deal with the drug problem? Why don't you deal with the violence problem? Why don't you deal with all of the sexual issues that are going on? That's a whole lot more of a pandemic amongst our kids than COVID ever has been. In fact, I did this some months back, and I'm going to repeat it. Some months back, I went back and looked at what would be the normal flu season, okay? In the normal flu season, the last normal flu season, we can't include 2020 because, amazingly, nobody got the flu in 2020 because everybody was diagnosed with COVID. That lets you know something right there. But 2000, let's go 2018 and 19. That was the last year that we could qualify like a normal flu season. And in that year, You know how many children died of just the common flu, and or let's say complications due to the common flu? It was like 470 plus, if I'm not mistaken, 472 or 477, which was way more than those that have died of COVID in the same time frame, which would have been like a flu season if you took the first year of COVID. In kids that had died due to complications of COVID was 300 and I don't know exactly 300 and some odd numbers, but not as many as the common flu. So we need to wake up. This is just a push for control. It's a push. You know what it is? It's a push to try and label anybody that has convictions, anybody that has principles, anybody that is going to push back. That's really what it is. Anybody that's going to push back against the government. It is the greatest power grab ever. I've said it before. They are using this. The science doesn't back it up. I actually want to, I'm going to see if I can find it here, but they just, the new Surgeon General for Florida, thank God for him, but the new Surgeon General for Florida, he is very outspoken about this because he is saying this is the science does not back it up. We have a problem, and his name is Joseph Ladapo. He is outspoken, and I'm thankful that he is. But Florida's new Surgeon General, during a press conference on Thursday, questioned the efficacy of COVID vaccines. Now, I don't know, sometimes you feel like you're just spitting in the wind with what you say, but he questioned the efficacy of COVID vaccines. I don't know. Let me just tell you this, and I know I'm going to get myself in trouble with some people. I don't know why so many people defend a vaccine that doesn't work. I don't understand it. I don't understand that at all. But they all defend a vaccine that does not work. I mean, you're talking about something that you got to get booster shots every 6 months because it wore off. It doesn't work. It does not work. It doesn't prevent you getting infected. We have had, thousands upon thousands of breakthrough cases. I love how they call them breakthrough cases. Why don't they just say the vaccine don't work? But so the Surgeon General of Florida, he is questioning the efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. I don't know why people defend a vaccine that doesn't work. It just blows my mind. I would be upset if I got vaccinated and then I got COVID. Here's what's funny. The people that get vaccinated and then they get COVID, okay, they got vaccinated because they didn't want to get COVID. They get vaccinated, they get COVID, but instead of being ticked off that the vaccine didn't work, instead of being upset that the vaccine didn't work, what they do is they say, well, my symptoms would have been a lot worse if I didn't have the vaccine. Well, how do you know? You really don't know. You don't know what your symptoms would have been like because you got it after being vaccinated. I know people, friends, a lot of people that they had maybe minor things for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then they were back to normal. So you have no clue what your symptoms would have been like. But instead of being upset that the vaccine didn't work and that you weren't protected, people keep defending these things as though, it's the answer to it all when we know that it's not. And so the Surgeon General of Florida, he's denouncing all mandates in workplaces, and he's arguing that people are going to would face more health repercussions by losing their jobs if they refuse to comply with the requirements. So we're going to be right back here in just a second, but I just wanted to kick this off this morning. Stick with us here in the Ryan Crossley Show.
To live
So, as I said, I believe this is our time. I believe that we need to speak up and be a voice in this hour. We cannot be afraid. We can't just sit by like ostriches with our heads in the sand. It's time to do something. It's time to be active. It's really time to be active. We can't be silent. It was like I read yesterday that quote of one of the Holocaust survivors that said they came for the socialists, and I wasn't a socialist, so I didn't help them out. And then he says, and then at the end he says they came for me, and there was nobody left to defend me. So if we don't speak up, there's going to be nobody left. Well, you heard me rant and rave for the first few minutes here, but I have a high privilege to have a friend with me today, and I truly consider him a friend. I don't know how many years we've known each other, but it's been quite a while. I'm actually guilty of stealing a girl from their church because I married Amy, who was also part of the same congregation that Ryan Chamberlain is a part of. But it's an honor to have Ryan with us today. Ryan Chamberlain is an author, speaker, and leadership influencer. In fact, I know he's been an entrepreneur and helping other entrepreneurs for years, been very, very successful. But something happened, I think, last year. I mean, a passion and a fire. He ran for Congress, so we're going to find out about that. And now is co-founding a new venture that I think personally is going to hopefully revolutionize the social media marketplace to where we can have a better voice in this time of censorship and wokeness. So I am glad to have Ryan Chamberlain with us today. Ryan, it's great to have you with us.
Glad to be here. This is exciting stuff, and we're proud of what you're doing down here. I mean, with the station, getting the word out, and I'm just glad to be here with you today.
Yeah, this has been really a blessing. Applied for this radio in 2013. It took forever to get it set up, and now in probably one of the most critical times of our history, we're able to do this and have this show, this political show or whatever we want to call it. But we talk about current events and what's going on. And you have worked for, tell us a little bit about your history. I know you've been a go-getter ever since I've known you, but tell us a little bit about the things that you've done in the past and what's brought you to this point.
Well, glad to do that. And I'll tell you, you and I have known each other a long time.
A long time.
If I would have just guessed, say, 25 years ago, and we've probably known each other longer than that,
yeah,
would Ryan Crossley one day have a political talk show? I probably would have never thought that wasn't on my radar. But as a young, I'm 47 years old. As a young man, I've always been an entrepreneur, and for about 25 years, I basically spent working with, building teams, working with leaders. I originally started out in the mortgage and finance industry in my early 20s. Married my beautiful wife, my high school girlfriend. We've been married 27 years.
Wow.
And she's listening right now, I'm sure, on the radio.
Well, you better say good things. If not, you're going to be in trouble.
It's been great. It's been great. And so we have 4 awesome sons. 3 of them are adults. Our youngest is a senior in high school. So
Wow.
we actually started young, and we're still young. So we're
It must be something about Ryan's, because I've got 4 sons also.
That's right. And so, I spent a lot of time in the entrepreneurial world, really building businesses that allowed me to travel and influence people all over the country.
Right.
And in the area of entrepreneurship, in the area of team development, in the area of leadership, that led me to authoring several books. The first one about 10, 12 years ago. And we've continued down that path. And in 2019, I was able to exit a big project.
Right.
And it was the first time in my adult life that I had basically everything off my plate. I had the ability to say, okay, what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
And about that time, I got a call saying, there's a congressional seat opening up, you should run. And there was actually a few different calls that happened about that time, and we prayed about it. It wasn't a rushed decision, but
Right.
we decided to jump in full speed ahead and run for U.S. Congress. District 3, that's in North Florida. The gentleman that retired was Congressman Ted Yoho. He served 4 terms, did a great job, and that seat vacated. But we ran and went all in, and we did not win. So I know what it's like to run hard
Right.
for a race and actually not get.
Well,
the
neither
votes.
did Biden, but he's president.
Yeah, I
I'm
guess.
sorry.
Yeah. So, and yeah, we won't go there right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
but,
we won't do that right now.
but it opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Right.
We have a lot of, and I'll give you one topic that kind of kicked off some of what I'm doing today. But I was asked at the end of the race, you literally have maybe thousands of conversations.
Right.
And you engage in topics that when you're running for Congress, people want to like put you on the spot. They
Right.
want to, and a lot of times they'll ask even pointed questions in front of groups and you're in debates and things like
Yeah.
that. So one thing I noticed about coming from the entrepreneurial world, teaching in the entrepreneurial world, believing in principles, godly principles
Right.
that is really the basis of which I believe our country was founded on,
Exactly.
was that there is, I consider myself a constitutional entrepreneur.
Exactly.
And what I mean by that is this country was founded by entrepreneurial principles. It's now being ran by someone that's never owned a business. Now,
No.
that alone doesn't, just because someone hasn't owned a business, that doesn't make them a bad person. However, what I noticed is the conversations that I have about our country with entrepreneurs tend to be different than those that maybe haven't been in that environment or in
Right.
that world or taken that risk. Doesn't necessarily mean they're all bad conversations, but they are different conversations. And someone that understands what it's like to build a business, have employees, wake up, basically, if you don't work, you don't feed your family.
And others don't feed theirs.
That you take on a different, approach. And the last thing I'll say about that is, I think that leaders and people that are constitutional entrepreneurs, godly, valued people, process what's happening in the news today differently.
I agree.
They generally, an entrepreneur, when they hear a problem, they think, how can we fix this? What's the solution?
Exactly.
Where someone that's not conditioned that way, they might be leaning toward, okay, what's the government going to do for me in this situation?
Sure.
And I think we just need some correction in that thinking pattern. I mean, we've got a lot of people dependent on people other than themselves for things they should be dependent on themselves for.
Right, and I think that's very evident right now. Of course, one of the big issues in the news right now is the supply chain crisis.
Yeah.
And I was actually, I think in your case, in my case also, two things. In your case, the business aspect of it, knowing what it's like to have employees, knowing what it's like to start a business, the costs involved, the time, all of that. It depends on you. Nobody else is going to take care of you. And then we have also, I think, a spiritual perspective as believers, as people that have godly values and morals, and we see what's going on in this world. I think you have two things that form a perspective to where you can see beyond sometimes what others that depend on mainstream media are going to see. I'll give you an example. I felt like the other day I got an insight onto the whole supply chain crisis. I think it's interesting that we didn't have any supply chain crisis last year, which is when we should have had a supply chain crisis. So it makes you think a little bit as to what's really going on. And thinking of businesses, what the insight I got was last year, small businesses were under attack like crazy. Everybody that had a small business had to shut down, while the big corporations were still open. All the Walmarts, Home Depots, Publixes, they were still open, selling the same thing that mom and pop were selling down the road, but mom and pop couldn't be open. So last year, small businesses were affected. But how are you going to affect Sam's Club? How are you going to affect Home Depot? I mean, they're so big. Well, a supply chain crisis is perfect because you go to Sam's Club now, above on the shelves, there is no reserves. What's out is out. And I think that all of that pushes towards something. I grew up overseas, so I know what it's like. A hyperinflation, I've been through that before on several occasions. And I'm talking about where in the same day the price of an item would change 4 or 5 times on the same day. So what that does is it makes people dependent on government. They expect government to solve the problem. And with the administration that we have right now, that's exactly what they want. They want to be the ones that, well, we'll solve your problems. Of course, that comes with a very high price. So right now, I see if we don't change that mentality, like what you're saying, if we can't influence people, and I think that we are influencers, if we can't influence people to change that mentality, the government will become your supplier. The government will become your problem solver, but that's on their terms and not yours,
It gives them a tremendous amount of leverage
Yes.
with companies in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Back to the power control conversation you were talking about, the big power grab here.
Right.
It's becoming evident that the government's figuring out ways to even push this mandate.
Right.
To be able to go to a big company and say, okay, we're just not going to do this for you anymore unless you do this.
Right.
That's a pretty big stick to swing. And really, it's an abuse of power is what it is.
And it's without going. I think the thing that has surprised me more than anything, and you ran for Congress, so I'm sure your insight is way even deeper than mine. But the thing that surprises me about it is none of this stuff is going through the processes it should go through to be able to affect companies in that way. For example, when President Biden came out and he gave his 5 pillars of what he was going to do with COVID not too long ago, it was a press conference. It didn't go through legislation. It didn't go through anything. It was a press conference. And from the press conference was where he said that about companies of 100 employees or more having to mandate all of their employees to get vaccinated. It was a press conference, and everybody from just a simple press conference started pressuring all of their employees to do this. When if people would fight back against it and realize, hey, this never went any further than that. I think November 8th, if I'm not mistaken, is supposed to be a marking date for that. But it's just amazing to me how just mandate after mandate, we never lived by mandates before. When in the history of living in the United States did we live by mandates? We didn't. Things had to go through the process. So they're not going through that anymore. And it's detrimental because the whole structure of how the United States government works is kind of falling apart because it's not going through the way that it needs to go through. You saw this, so tell me what motivated you to run for Congress, and how was that? What did you learn in the process?
Well, I think the original motivation is, I'd love to help leave this place better
Yeah.
than what it is. And
Right.
it might have been even a simpler decision to run at that moment in time, because at that moment in time, I certainly thought our previous president was going to be in office another 4 years.
Didn't we
right?
all? Yeah.
And so, I'd love to be a part of what I saw happening to make America
Great again, yeah.
So there was a little bit of an excitement in that particular, like we were a part of something. I wanted to be a part
Great.
of something great.
Yeah.
Now it's a big fix.
Yeah.
It's a big fix. It's a big course correction. And people are asking me all the time, are you going to run again? Are you going to run again? Well, not just for the sake of running. It needs to be the right time, the right place.
Right.
At that moment in time, I was supposed to run. There's currently not a seat right now that's vacated or open, but
Right.
there are things that will come in time, and we'll see where that goes. But I think the motivation to really be a part of something special and to help bring more of a, I'm not an over spiritual person necessarily.
Right.
You know, I'm not a preacher, a minister of that capacity, but someone that has really tried as hard as I can to live my life based on godly values
Right.
and what I'm around. And you know what I'm around constantly.
Sure. I mean, we're of the same
Bring some
mold.
of that.
Yeah.
Bring some of that to the table. And I haven't seen enough of
Yeah.
that push without it, not necessarily pushing it in people's faces, but just living those principles and acting in that capacity in Congress. Certainly was looking forward to having that
Yeah.
opportunity.
Well, I think, it's almost funny and sad at the same time that we have to kind of apologize, or not apologize, but be very careful how we word what we say about our foundation, our beliefs, we want to make this a better place. We want to live by the godly principles we were raised by and we believe. That's no different than the founding fathers. They were, I think they were probably even more adamant about mixing their faith with their politics
100%.
than we are.
100%. And so, yeah, I mean, when you really, I'm a believer that you can't fix corrupt. There's a lot of corrupt.
Yeah.
There's so many favors owed in Congress right now and in the
Yeah.
elected official ring that they're too busy cashing out favors than they are to actually get anything done. So when you
Yeah.
look at the fact that we, the people, elected the problem,
Yeah.
we've elected, not that you and I have elected
No.
every person that's up there, but it is a real awakening, and that's what's happened in our country. There's been it's an awakening period. We'll look back
I
at this history
kinda-
and say, man, there's
Yeah. I kind of feel like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like everything that was happening under the surface that maybe we didn't see, I almost feel like President Trump was used to expose all of that.
Yeah.
It was always there because the same people that are in office right now have been in office for 35, 40 years. It was
we were
always
not
there.
aware
No.
of how much.
No.
and we may still not know how much.
No.
But we are way more aware today than we were.
Yeah, well, you can see because nobody pays consequences for lying to Congress or doing any of that right now, and we see. I've always said I think President Trump went in to drain the swamp, but I don't know that he knew how deep the swamp really was. And so, in your run for Congress, what did you hear from people? What did you feel? Because, you get one thing from mainstream media, and we're going to go here in a little bit to find out what you're doing to create a platform, a positive family value, God-centered platform. But what did you hear from people? Because we don't hear that in the news.
Yeah, I think the theme, if I had one big thing that I'm latching on to right now during the 2020 run, of course, we thought our president was going
Right.
to have another 4 years. It really, the mantra was winning back Congress. I think the American people have seen how
Right.
the current Congress leadership, congressional leadership, and how they've handled every single thing President Trump tried to do, how they handled that.
Yeah.
So it was very obvious that it didn't matter what one side wanted. The other
Right.
side was just not going to let a win happen, even if it was
Even
right
if it
for
was
the
good
American,
for the country.
even
Yeah.
if it was good for their party.
Right.
They didn't want the scorecard to show a win. At least that's what it felt like. That's what
Yep.
it seemed like. That's what the stats show
Yep.
has happened. So I think that most people running for Congress were wanted to be a part of helping. It didn't quite make it happen, but we gained some progress. It looks like it's
did.
going to happen this next time around.
We did. That's why well, I know we all have our own feelings about it, but we gained in Congress. We gained in the House. In the Senate, nobody expected it to be what it is. So, and then to not have won the presidency just kind of was an odd anomaly. We'll leave it at that. But I think if ever we've realized the presidency has, being the executive branch, it has power, but I don't think anybody's ever realized just how much power Congress wields.
And it shouldn't have as much
No.
as what it has today. It's an abuse.
It is.
And so, and truthfully, it, we've got to make some decisions as a country
Yeah.
to make sure it doesn't get abused by any party at any time.
Right.
And we got to make sure that those, abuses get under control, or we're gonna have some
We are.
serious problems.
Yeah, I realized, some have asked why certain things are the way they are. When you have the House basically controls anything that's money issues. So when you have a House that has no problem just keep spending, you're going to have what we're facing now, which is hyperinflation and just, they still want to pass all of their things, but Nancy Pelosi, I always ask, why did she have so much power? And then I realized they control the money. The House controls the money. And if you control the money, I mean, that's so much power, while the Senate is, does the judge approvals, the judicial parts and stuff. The House controls the money, and that's why it's been such a battle. Now, kind of moving on a little bit, I'm not going to ask you if you're going to run again. That's got to be God's timing. Yeah. But from that, after losing the race, which I think you put was the most competitive race.
Yeah, there were more candidates in that particular race.
Yeah,
and I say most competitive. There was it ended up, the day of the election, there were 10 candidates.
Wow.
That were still in the race. It started out with more than that. So from a competitive standpoint, it may not have been the most money spent on a congressional race, but there was a lot of competition.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any other race in Florida that had 10 candidates on the ticket. 10 names.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of competition there. We were able to learn a lot. I made some good friends that ran against me in that. We weren't really running against each other. We were running for the seat.
Yeah.
But there's always a little bit of that competitive edge that slips out when you're running. And so, but through that process, it really has continued. The conversation has continued. It's gotten, of course, we have a new person occupying the White House right now.
Right.
And a whole new administration, a whole new set of conversations, and it has accelerated everything. But toward the end of that, the night up until the day of the election, we thought we had a really good chance of going. We didn't make it, so there I am the day after saying, okay, what am I going to do next?
Yeah, what's next?
And so within a few months, conversations, I was able to, just very fortunately, one of the largest supporters of my campaign was out of Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. He's a very successful entrepreneur, very wealthy entrepreneur. And we had some conversations. Conversations was, what are you going to do? And that led to back and forth. And to really summarize this, we decided to partner and form True Patriot Network.
Yeah.
That conversation really began in December. True Patriot Network, we decided to launch. It's a social media platform. It was an answer to what we were seeing, and we're not the only ones doing it, but it's the answer to what we were seeing with the Parler episode.
Yeah. Parler never bounced back from him, really.
The squashing of the free speech in that environment.
The censorship.
And I believe social media is here to stay. I think everybody does that. It's continually gaining ground when it comes to it is how people watch listen to shows like this, recorded or live. It's how they gather their news. It's how they communicate. It's how they develop their opinion, and it certainly is how the next generation is. Growing up as a young man, TV and TV channels, you watch different channels for different things, whether it's Discovery Channel here or a news channel here or a movie channel here. that's where social media is headed. People are going to have 2 or 3 or 4 different social media apps depending on what they're wanting for that particular scenario. And that is, Facebook's doing a great job of pushing conservatives away.
That's their
and
agenda.
so there's millions and millions of people that are not necessarily getting off of it, but they're realizing what it is for what it is. And so that opened the door to the conversation of TPN.
Mm-hmm.
We knew that we had to do some things different than Parler and a few others. It began with us. Here's the unbelievable great news for TPN is that we're not out needing to raise funds, and this is a very expensive project.
I'm sure
it probably will be the most expensive thing I've ever participated in when you look at what you have to do to get it to handle millions of people and set up. And to not have to go out and raise money for that has been a huge blessing because we have the funding that's needed for it from day one. At the same time, it's not unlimited funding, and it's not billions of dollars. We've got to be very strategic with what we do because if you've noticed, many of the platforms that launched over the last year get off to a really fast start and a really fast crash.
Yep.
They open themselves up, which everybody does in the technical world, to getting hacked and cyber bullies, which could be some of the other big companies messing with them.
Oh, no doubt about that.
It doesn't have to be some guy in a third world country that's hacking. It's somebody like your next door neighbor that's working for someone. And so
names will go unmentioned, but we know who you're talking about.
I mean, it's the way it is, and that's part of that world. So we chose a certain path. It began with us purchasing our own servers, making sure we had control of our data so that, we couldn't get shut down from that standpoint.
Right.
We chose to launch, what may not be this way forever, but we launched invitation only.
Yeah.
So that it wouldn't get an influx of hackers, and so that we could actually perfect it as we grew and maybe control the growth a little bit. Although we'd love to have millions on, our platform wasn't ready for millions 6 months ago. It just wasn't ready.
Well, even your servers and everything,
you've got to be able to scale.
Right. You've got to be able to start, and then you don't want to overburden the system right then, and then nobody's going to trust it.
So that's the technical. The why, though, is the most important. You know, to build a platform that embraces faith, family, freedom, free enterprise. Those are not new words, but is there really a platform that's going to partner with faith influencers, that's going to partner with godly entrepreneurs, that's going to partner with conservative, when I say partner, that is going to embrace conservative views, allow all views, whether it's liberal or conservative, but this idea of only, letting one side's opinion through so that it can craft a generation's thinking pattern, we have to answer that. We can't sit back as conservatives and allow that to happen because they are. I heard the first part of the show. They're after the kid. They're after the kids. They're after the kids.
They're after the kids.
Because they can mold the kids, they can condition them.
I mean, when you think about DC Comics doing what it's doing with Superman,
oh my goodness,
doesn't that just? I mean, it's infuriating.
I
mean, I grew up, Superman, Spider-Man. These were your toys, And now for me to have to look at my kids, I've got an 8-year-old, and for me to have to look at him and now have to be careful with, the superheroes that we grew up on, it's insane. But they're after our children. There's no doubt about that. I think that that what you're doing is incredibly valuable. I'm hoping in a way. I think the left sometimes can go too far where they even overstep their own bounds. They're canceling people like Dave Chappelle, who is not by any means a conservative person or any kind of God values, but they're canceling him. He's fighting now against Netflix.
Well, they have proven they are going to cancel anybody that does not go with the agenda the vision they have for where they want to go.
It's actually even beyond. I like that you said it's going to be a platform for conservatives and liberals, in the sense of, everybody's thoughts and ideas. I think as long as the foundations of what you're doing, family values, God values, faith centered. But they are overstepping to where even people that have been great voices for them, if I can put it that way, are now being canceled out. And I'm hoping, I've got my fingers crossed, I hope they overstep enough to where some of those say, hey, you really don't represent us. I thought you did, but you don't. And maybe they will show that at the polls, at the voting booths next time around. But so talk about a little bit about social media and politics, because I think if we learn anything in the last two elections is how influential social media is. And I'm hoping that by the time the 2022 elections roll around, TPN's right in the thick of it.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at a poll here,
Yeah.
and I don't do a whole lot of poll stuff. A research center, the Pew Research Center,
Yeah.
took out a survey. 64% of Americans right now say that social media has mostly a negative effect on the way the country
Wow.
is, what's going on in the country today. Teens are being targeted online.
Yeah.
Targeted,
Yeah.
not just like they're not just seeing stuff. They're actually being targeted
Sure.
online, and so 41% of teens have had negative experiences using social networking. So you really scratch your head if this many people are seeing it as a negative thing.
Right.
What do we do to fix it? What do we
Sure.
do to fix it? And really, you have to give credit. Whatever the stats are today, you have to give credit to the big two or three that are out there,
Sure.
because they have, they have paved the path that we're currently on, and so they have now opened up the box to where the free market is what we're watching and
Which in a way is not what they want.
that is not what they have. The free market answers.
Right.
It answers. And so the need is being created. To your point, I mean, some of the biggest companies out there are looking at changing their name. They're looking at trying to get to be viewed differently,
Right.
Because they know they've got a bad rap for what they're doing.
Right.
But, social media is not going away.
No.
I could give you all kinds of stats here.
Sure.
I'm not a huge stat guy, but there's negatives on social media. Now,
Sure.
the other answer to that is there's positives with social media as well. To be able to give the average person like me or
A
you,
platform.
a platform, the
yeah.
ability to actually combat what we hear on the big media giants, whether it's the CNNs or, whatever,
Right.
or Fox.
Fox,
It doesn't
yeah.
matter. The big giants, to be able to develop our own opinion, share that opinion, is a powerful. I mean, that's an American thing. That is a tremendous
Yeah.
American thing. It's a
Yeah.
worldwide thing, but from a free speech standpoint, having that in place going forward, knowing what kind of control and what kind of manipulation can happen, having some platforms that actually attract a younger crowd, attract people
Mm-hmm.
that don't just want to get on there and throw politics, although that's okay, but a place for the family, a
Right.
place for their conversation about their faith is really protected, but not just protected, really embraced and partnered with
Right.
to make sure that it continues on.
Where you can post a picture of something that might be about your faith and it not be viewed as where you got to click on it because it's sensitive content.
Yeah. The source is not trusted.
Right. I mean, it's like, what are you talking about? I agree with you. I think, if anything showed us that was the pandemic, when churches had to go online. I mean, they depended on some of these social media platforms to be able to have their services viewed by their own congregants. So I think that, everything that's coming out with the whistleblowing and the effect on teens, which I I think is it's kind of funny how we act surprised sometimes when a report comes out and we see the stats, and it shouldn't surprise us because it's there. And I think we can see all of that. But I believe also, I think social media is going to be, it already is really, but it's going to be the worldwide communication avenue. Because another reason for that is because there is so much distrust of mainstream media. Because there's agendas, and everybody has their agendas, left or right. We have our agendas. I mean, it's human nature. And so people distrust, but if they hear, like as a pastor, our congregants, most of them, if they hear me say something, they're trusting me,
Sure.
And now you're always going to have people that don't agree with you, and that's fine. They have that right, but they're trusting you. So it is a very powerful tool, and any powerful tool can be used rightly or it can be abused, So as far as TPN goes, how do you see it being different from everything else that's been tried or that already is out there?
Well, I think there are some similarities in what it is. Donald Trump is launching a new platform, and in the launch of that, he advertised it as an alternative to Twitter.
Okay. Yeah.
So when people think
Which was his favorite platform.
it was his favorite. It's a certain way, a methodology of communicating that is different than a Facebook style. And so when I think of posting pictures of my family or my church, I don't think of Twitter. I think of Facebook, more of a community type thing, and Twitter more of an informational and stay in the loop, quick paced, short.
Yeah, it's nuggets.
And so that's great. I support what he's doing. I think it's great. I think if he continues on, it'll be a big platform.
Right.
There, TPN is going to be more of an alternative to a Facebook. So it's going to be more of a community platform without some of the gotchas that I think businesses. I'm also coming at this from an entrepreneurial standpoint.
Sure.
Entrepreneurs want to get the word out about their business, and Facebook is a different model. You could have 10,000 followers on a page on a Facebook page, and like 45 people see what you post.
Right.
Because the way they monetize is a certain way. I'm not necessarily saying that they're wrong, they're bad, but it serves a purpose for what they do, but it's certainly not appealing to entrepreneurs these days.
Right.
Spending that kind of money just to get their voice heard. So we're going to be a little bit more of a blend between a Facebook and an Instagram.
Gotcha.
Where you have followers and you follow.
Right.
When you post something, it shows up in the feed of everyone that's followed you.
Everyone that's followed you, yeah.
And so our advertising plan in the future, which we haven't launched yet,
Sure.
will take on a different method than Facebook. So we're going to be different with how we think about entrepreneur or influencers. Period.
Right.
Because even a radio show, that's an entrepreneurial
it is.
endeavor, because we're trying to get that message out. We're trying to expand it. We're trying to grow that audience. We're trying to, these things aren't free. The equipment that's here, I know, wasn't free.
Right.
And, so that's the way the world works.
Yeah. Well, anything has the cost that it took to produce it to get it to where it's at, and then. It's almost like, I've written 3 books. You've written 4. My dad told me one time, he said, Ryan, you can't just give that stuff away because that's your intellectual property. I mean, that's your mind. That's your thoughts. That's your hours. And you know how many hours you can have in a book, hundreds of hours in a book. And so, there is the real factor of not just the cost of it, but the why we do these things. We do these things because God has given us a mind to work. Everything we do with all our might, and there is a recompense for that, if I can put it that way. I like what you're talking about, because I've noticed that, when sometimes I want to see things from the people that I'm following, and I never see them.
Yeah.
And then so that makes you wonder whether people see anything that you're.
Yeah. So we're gonna work. What makes us different? We're gonna work differently with influencers to be able to help them spread their word. We're going to partner with them in some cases, because many of them have products and things that support what they're doing.
Right.
And if people knew about it, there's a percentage that would want to participate. So we believe there's a partnership opportunity there, a rev share down the road for TPN. We have chosen to go invitation only.
I was going to ask you about that, if you can explain that, because I know this is going to go on TPN itself, but it's also on our Facebook Live and our YouTube and our church channel, our radio channel. So talk about that. I know that I just recently joined, but how's that work?
Yeah, so when someone joins, everyone gets a link.
Okay.
They get their own invitation link, meaning the only way someone hears about TPN
Is if I invite,
or they can get into TPN
Gotcha.
is through a link that was created by
a member of TPN.
a member of TPN. And that for now it has served a purpose. We're looking at other ways to open that up a little bit more, but we'll always have a way that we want our members to refer other members. And when they do that, it really helps organically grow the culture that we want to grow in the platform.
How long ago did you launch TPN?
Well, July 4th is the day we randomly picked a day out of the hat.
Yeah, just random. Very random.
July 4th is when we went live in the App Store.
I love it.
And so everything prior to that was kind of beta development. It was we started out online web. Yeah. And to me, we've continued a little bit of the beta stuff, but we're now ready to open up and turn on some numbers. We're partnering.
You can handle numbers now.
We can handle numbers now. We've gone through the testing, and I'm partnering with different organizations. Matter of fact, we did an event in Jacksonville last week, and we were one of the key sponsors at that event, and got to work with people like Donald Trump Jr. and Kayleigh McEnany and Dan Bongino. And TPN was on stage. We were the social media platform that was there, and hundreds of people joined the platform. Within
wonderful.
Just a few minutes, and we were very pleased that our servers could handle the volume of that kind of.
Right.
That's not millions at a time, but it tested some things we needed to test, and we passed the test. So,
good.
And the message is there. Conservatives want somebody to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we've arrived or we've proven that we're here. I believe we're here for the long haul, but you got to prove that to the marketplace.
Right.
So right now, I'm okay with people saying, you know what, let me give TPN a try. Let it be one of the, I got 2 or 3 of the platforms anyway. And whatever you would post on Facebook or Instagram, post it on TPN and begin to build that. Let's just call it a backup plan. Let's call it what it is for now. I believe it'll shift to the main plan here soon. But we're just now really growing that user base.
Well, I'm with you. As a pastor, I think about every Sunday. I think about it when I'm speaking, and I have to talk about things that are in the Bible. I don't care if it's offensive to somebody else that might have a different way of living or thinking, but I have to preach about them. And we know that the Word of God is a sword that cuts, and sometimes it does deep surgery. And for those of us that want life changes, we invite that because we want God to work on us and change us and mold us. But for some that don't have that point of view, it's offensive and they want to attack. And so I'm very surprised that up to now, sometimes I think I've been able, because of the Spanish aspect of it, maybe they just don't know what I'm saying. But I'm very surprised that we have still we haven't had excuse me, any censorship on us, because I'm a pretty direct person when it comes to talking. Now, we get flagged all the time on the radio program. Anything you say about vaccine, against or for, they get flagged and all that kind of stuff. But when you say, hey, you need to have another plan, I think about that, because at any time, one of the big platforms, and I hope they don't. I hope that they understand that free speech is free speech, although they are private companies. So,
well, everybody's thinking about it. I was
Yeah.
listening to Dan Bongino the other day,
yeah, I love Dan Bongino.
and he said to his audience, he said, listen, everybody, I don't know how long they're going to let me do what I'm doing.
Right,
On this platform, that platform, this platform.
right.
Follow the podcast because I have complete control over
Exactly.
the podcast. But everywhere else, I'm just telling y'all, I have no idea if I'm going to be able
Right.
to continue to do what I'm doing. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that he is going to get cut off or he should get cut. I don't believe he should at all.
No,
But in his mind,
He's
I could-
preparing.
he was sincere with what he was saying. In his
Yeah.
mind, he's thinking, I may wake up tomorrow
yeah.
and be banned from everything except for whatever I have total control over.
I think if there's anything that made everybody realize you're not immune, is when they can do that to the president of the United States. I mean, and never let him back on.
but and it doesn't stop there.
No.
The leaders of the Taliban, there's
Yeah.
other, it doesn't just stop with censoring
No.
the president of your country. Okay.
It's yeah.
You almost can't even
No.
make this. I mean, it doesn't even sound like it's a real conversation that
No.
we're having from the. But we saw that. We saw the censoring. We see. I'm not so sure it silenced. They thought it would silence him. Mm-hmm. But
I think what it did accomplish, and this is why we need stuff like TPN, is what it did accomplish was there's a certain amount of people that aren't hearing. You and I, because we're interested, because we make the effort. I know about his rallies. We're able to follow and all of that. But a lot of people that depended solely on his Twitter feed, that kind of stuff.
So 67% right now of adults, 62% of adults get their news from social media.
62%.
62%. That was a few years ago. I think it's gone up.
Yeah.
I think it's gone up. And so meaning they don't even watch TV anymore.
No. And now
They watch the clips that somebody put out.
And now you have so many other venues like Newsmax, Daily Wire, OAN. I mean, I'm talking on the conservative side. I don't know that the liberals need.
You got
that.
the Ryan Crossley show.
You got the Ryan Crossley show, which I'm very clear. I'm not a news show. I'm an opinion show. Don't get your news from me, but get your opinions. But I think this is very, very important because I've thought about it. Like I say, I've thought about it as a pastor. I've thought about, what if all of a sudden our social media presence is cut off? What do we do? And we've talked here locally about getting our own servers, getting our own type of, but that's so costly. And it's so, now we wouldn't have millions of demand watching our live stream, but we do have thousands, that might. Yeah. So it's, if we have people that will protect our values, like TPN, if we have people companies that will say, hey, we're going to give these people a voice, man, it's so important. I would encourage any pastor, any religious leader, any influencer that wants to make sure they have a voice at any time. This is a critical thing for them to have. We've got
a visitor.
I killed her. I think it's critical that we have this because if not, there is no other plan. So, with that in mind, what would you tell our listeners? I mean, they basically can only connect right now through invite, but can they go check out TPN in any way?
They can. If they go to gettpn.net.
Okay.
And we're going to create a code for you probably gettpn.net/RCS.
Gotcha.
Ryan Crossley Show. We'll come up with something simple like that, but that's how they'll be able to get a TPN account, find your show on there.
Right. Because you've got where people can do business channels on there too.
We do.
Right.
We do. We've actually got our next upgrade has everything to do with business channels to make some new features just better for businesses than what we currently have right now. So about every 2 to 3 weeks, we have an app update because we're in development mode.
Right.
As we're growing, we're developing basic things to make them just work better and get better. So for right now, if they go to gettpn.net, they'll be able to get an account. They'll be able to find your page, or your channel, your profile,
Right.
and begin to play around with TPN.
Now, when I joined it just a few days ago when we were talking, and just for all that are listening, it's very, very user friendly. I found that. So whoever, those that have helped you develop this, it's very user friendly. I think they've been very wise in that it's not a whole huge learning curve.
It's not a huge one.
It's very similar.
We own the code to this. We own
Right.
100% of this. This is not software that we necessarily bought something, a plug and play type
Right.
thing. There's a lot of development, but yeah, we want to keep it simple.
Right. I liked it. I haven't spent as much time in it yet, but I'm excited about it. Well, what then right now? I mean, what is something you would like to say to anybody that is listening? Just the climate of our day, what you see coming, what they need to be ready for, when we're talking faith and politics.
Well, that's a pretty interesting question. We go a lot of areas with that.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. I think sometimes things get worse before they get better.
Yeah.
I think that those that really make it in the end have held true to their principles and their values.
Right.
And I would just encourage people to understand that this is, God is still in control.
Yeah.
He's still, he's not going to let us deal with something we can't handle. I keep that in the back of my mind, because sometimes if you just pay attention to what's in the news feed constantly, you're wondering, is any of this worth it?
Yeah.
Even trying to, it is worth trying. It is, because we are supposed to stand up for what we believe in.
Yeah.
And we're in a God, this country, what's so great about our country is that it was founded on godly principles. Okay. Any deviation from that really is destroying the greatness that we have our hands on. So
Right.
what we're talking about is worthy of talking about, and just continue to get out there and do your best with what you're doing. Now, as far as TPN support, we'd love to have everyone's support. I'd love to have everyone on TPN.
Right.
I know not everyone will be, but we will invite you to go to gettpn.net, grab an account, help spread the word. You'll see an invite button there. You can invite your friends. That's the only way they're going to hear about it. Obviously, the more friends you invite, the more followers you'll have, and the more
Right.
conversations you can have on that. But we believe that we're doing this for the right reasons, and we appreciate you having us on the show.
I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to ask you a question,
All
because
right. Yeah, go for it.
I made a pretty serious choice when I thought about doing this. I do a political show in Spanish on Tuesdays, 7 to 9 in the morning, and I do this one on Wednesdays. I pastor primarily Hispanic people. 99% of our church is Hispanic, which tend to normally I think because of lack of just knowing what each party represents, they tend to lean to the Democratic Party. I think they don't understand a lot of times that the Republican Party actually represents their godly values and moral values and family values that they hold to dearly. So I've taken on that aspect of educating them, and you get some pushback,
Sure.
you know. And I've made the decision that pushback or no pushback, we have to stand up. I think one of the things that has frustrated me, I felt it during the COVID stuff. It was like there was no clear voice telling us, "Hey, this is what you need to do." Everybody kind of had to make it up as we went along. So I would like to get your perspective on being a believer, being a leader, because I know you're not just a member in the church. You're part of their leadership team, their music. A lot of people might not know that about your talent, but have you gotten pushback? And I think you probably have. We all do.
Sure.
But what would you say to people that think, well, we can't really mix faith with this because then we alienate people or we polarize people? I've taken I've made the decision just like you have. I'm going to be a voice. I'm going to try and influence people in what I believe is the right way. But talk a little bit about that before we wrap
I
up.
appreciate that. Well, the first thing I think of is this. I want to be someone that attacks the principle and not the person.
Right.
There's a lot of attacking the person going on in today's political environment where they want to attack, the individual instead of maybe what they stand for. But what I'm about to say, I don't think I've ever said on a recording or definitely live like this. So I don't mean it to offend anyone.
Mm-mm.
But because I'm 47, I'm not a young guy necessarily, not old, not young.
I'm 45, so we're right there.
We're right there. I was 46, running for Congress. It really never crossed my mind when I ran for Congress until I was actually in the trenches running.
Yeah.
It never even crossed my mind that there were Democrats sitting on the church pews.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, I know ministers have known that for a while. I've
Right.
had conversations with them because they're dealing with different things. But it never registered with me that you could be in alignment with
Right.
that party,
Right.
and also be in alignment with God. And that doesn't mean I'm necessarily right on this.
Right.
But from one perspective, so I had to rethink that a little bit. And I've come to this conclusion. The Democrats that are sitting on church pew, do I believe a Democrat can go to heaven? Yeah, I do. But I believe they're Democrats for different reasons than what the current Democrat Party is the agenda they're trying to push. Because
I agree.
if we created a checklist, just a fair checklist, you're not making anything up, we're just saying, here's what this party is.
Right.
They're moving down this path. Here's this party moving down this path. Just by that checklist, no one that attends church on a regular basis would want to be on the liberal side of that checklist.
Yeah.
Now, I understand there's other issues. It could be that maybe there's some fiscal reasons,
Right.
things that they believe in, and maybe there's a issue that's
Right.
very important to them in their life. One issue, they had something
Immigration
happen.
issues.
If
like
something
that.
happened to them, and that issue takes precedence over all other values and issues.
Right.
And I think there's some people that do that as well. So I've had to rethink that. I think that going forward, I'd love to help people vote based on their value system, rather than party.
It's what I say. I think I say we need to vote not based on our convenience, but based on our convictions. And I think sometimes I agree with you 100%. I think that a lot of Democrats today are not really the Democrats of today. They're the Democrats of the JFK years or stuff like that, or
And so
even earlier.
I actually enjoy engaging in conversations, with someone
Right.
that, hey, I'm a Democrat because I've always been a Democrat. See,
Right.
politics has become a team sport.
Yeah.
It's been there for a while. Just like if you go to a football game, you're a Dolphin fan.
Right.
It really doesn't matter what other team is in the other side. You don't like them.
That's,
You don't
that's
know
right.
why
Yeah.
you don't like them. You just don't like
Yeah,
them.
they're against us. Yeah.
So, if whether you're a Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter what,
Right.
the other party is.
That's
You just
true.
don't like them because they're the other party. They're,
Right.
they're the other team. So if we get down to, I would encourage people to dig into the why question. Why would I support this? Why would I support this? Why would I support this?
Right.
I can't say that I did that as deep, the first 45 years of my life as I've done the last two. But there are definitely things I disagree with on the Republican side.
Right.
There's corrupt people on both
Both
sides.
sides.
We got problems on both sides.
Both sides.
The Republican Party is to blame for some of the maybe a lot of the problems we have
For
going
sure.
on today. So I don't want to say one. We're not talking about party. We're talking about principles and values
Exactly.
and what you support as a Christian, and basing your decision. I would be careful. I almost get nervous, hold my hand up sometimes, saying, "Yeah, I'm part of the Republican Party."
Right.
Although it's more in alignment with my value system, so that's where I need to be at this moment in
And
time.
that's what I agree with 100%. You look at who represents me better. And so, okay, I align myself with them as far as they represent my beliefs, my values better. Does not mean that everything they're doing is 100% correct. There's corrupt stuff going on there too. So I think that our challenge is always to remain God-centered and faith-based. And that is where we get our values from. That's where we get our family values from, even our business values. You're a businessman. Mm-hmm. Your business values come from those same beliefs. So, man, it's been great having you on this show. And I know that this is going to go on. It's live now on our social media, but we'll be repeating this. I want to invite everybody to go to the website, GetTPN Now.
GetTPN.net.
GetTPN.net. Check it out. I'll be sending out links. I think that this is a great venue. And I pray, I really do. I pray that it just blows up to where it's nationwide, international now, because we need something. We need alternatives. I really do believe that. I believe in any free market, you need alternatives that you can say, hey, well, this represents me better, and I enjoy this. I like this. So any last words before we close out today?
No, I appreciate you having me on the show. We're excited to promote the show on TPN, and we welcome these kind of conversations.
Yeah.
So thanks so much.
Well, we enjoy it every Wednesday. It's given me a nice time to be able to not be pastor. And I've told people that when I do this show, don't look at me as a pastor, although they're going to look at me as a pastor. But just we need to talk about these things. And I feel, I had asked you the question earlier, but I feel as pastors, we are also influencers. We are also human beings. And as human beings, as fathers, as brothers, we also care about this country. I don't care just about the four walls of our sanctuary that we have church in. I care about this country. I care about the decision we make, the direction it's going. And I guess in one of my points of view, if you're going to have the Jesse Jacksons of this world, and if you're going to have the Al Sharptons of this world be vocal on their agenda,
Sure.
then we need ministers and pastors to speak up on the other side. So that's why we're doing this, and we're glad you're here. Thanks for taking your time out.
Thanks for asking.
And we'll be learning a whole lot more as we go forward. So thank you to everybody that's connected to the Ryan Crossley Show this morning. This is our time. We always play this song. I believe it's our time to speak up. We can't you can lick your wounds. You can get depressed because, like Ryan Chamberlain was saying, you can read the news and you can get depressed just looking at it. Like, is there any hope? But yes, there's hope. There's hope because we're speaking up. There's hope because we're talking about these things. There's hope because you're tuning in and other people are tuning in, and we all influence one another. And maybe at the end of the day, that's what's happening more than anything right now, is people are going to allow themselves to be influenced by people they love and care about more than just a big agenda that might be out there. Thank you for being part of the Ryan Crossley Show. We'll see you next week, Wednesday at 9 a.m.